Last night, as you guys know, I played Thursday night draft on Thursdays, believe it or not. Where's my deck list I put in here? There it is. And last night was no exception. So here's the deck we drafted. We had drafted an Izzet deck. I think I'm on 3 weeks in a row. No, I did Boros last week. So I'm on 3 of the last 4 weeks I've played Izzet. It seems to be open a lot. Pack one, pick one for me was actually Dawn of Hope, which was speculative. I'm like, the best card in the pack. It can take over limited formats. I don't mind playing this in Selesnya. I'm a little less excited about playing it in Boros, but it's still something I will play in Boros. Has good synergy with feeding you in the mid game of being a mana sink. Great card. So that was pack one, pick one. And then my next like 3 cards I think were best card in the pack, Hypothesizzle, second best card in the pack, like We Dragonauts. Then it was like a Direct Current, and then it was I think a Beacon Bolt passed to me. So I got pushed out of white pretty quick. Ended up being the guy on my left was playing Boros, and the guy on my right was playing Golgari. So white cards being taken from me in pack 2, red cards being taken from me in pack 2, and pack 1 and pack 3, all the black cards being filtered out pretty much. So ended up in Izzet, which is fine. I like Izzet a lot. The cards of note, I did get past the Connive Concoct, which was kind of nice. I picked up a Firemind's Research. I don't often want to play this card, but in Izzet, in a draft format, I'm like, I'll try it. I had a lot of spells. The distribution in this is 11 creatures and 12 non-creature spells, all of which can trigger, I think, Firemind's Research, except Firemind's itself, with a lot of Jumpstart, running in with 1, 2, 3, 4. Is it only 4? Oh, five pieces of Jumpstart in the deck, as well as Devious Cover-Up to put a couple more back in. Low creature count, but the creatures are decent. Electrostatic Field, Ornery Goblins for trading or early aggression, Electromancer for discounted spells, Leapfrog for damage, Legion Warboss to take over the game. This was my pack. I think it was my pack 2 pick 1. The rare I open. Spoutward Minotaur to present blockers. Whisper Agent as just a decent body for trading. Piston Fist, the same deal. Good on trading, okay to kill stuff. A fair amount of removal with 2 Direct Currents. Direct Currents were expensive for me. I picked one over an Inescapable Blaze. That was my first one. And the second one I picked over a Chemister's Insight or a We Dragonauts, which was a little bit painful as well. I didn't want to pass the Chemister's Insight, but I feel like recurring removal in Izzet is just too powerful. Beacon Bolt was very, very good. This was also expensive. I don't remember what I picked it over, but it cost me a lot. The opportunity cost is quite high on that. Got our mid-game payoff. I think this was instead of a rare somewhere, like this was maybe like a pick 2 for me, or possibly a pick 1 out of one of the new packs. I can't remember. The card ended up being very, very good. I won a number of games with this card. Crackling Drake was a late payoff that got passed to me, which was great. I definitely needed the extra win condition. I had an opportunity to draft, I think, 5 Hypothesizzles at the table, and I took 3 of the 5. The other ones were, I think that was one of the decisions, Beacon Bolt versus Hypothesizzle. I think it was Hypothesizzle number 2 versus Beacon Bolt number 1, too. I'm glad I ended up with the Beacon Bolt, but it was a tough decision. And then Connive Concoct, which did well across the course of the night. All right, let me talk you through the games, and I'll tell you about which cards overperformed, underperformed. Let me also take a look at the sideboard over here. I drafted at one point I got a little bit worried about my creature count, so I drafted a couple mediocre creatures like Passwall Adept and Fire Urchin just to fill the curve out. I did get an Unexplained Disappearance at one point, which I would consider playing in here. And I drafted a very late Glaive of the Guild pack with 5 Guild Gates. There was a chance this would help me in grindy games. And at one point, I was still maybe on the white bandwagon, so I picked up a Luminous Bonds. There's a Dimir Informant, a Wojak Bodyguard, and a Boros Locket to maybe splash for the Luminous Bonds and the Dawn of Hope if I found a game where I wanted to do that. And then a Cosmotronic Wave and a Gravitic Punch. Not a lot to do with the Gravitic Punch. There's no creature in this deck with any particularly high power. It's more of a grindy deck. All right, so match 1, I was up against a Selesnya opponent with a fairly decent early game curve and then some nice late game options. I think he ran a Boros Guild Mage and 2 Selesnya Guild Mages. Had a number of the Dissidents, the little guys that are pumpable for mid-game mana sinks as well. Oops, not Dissenter, Dissident, like that, I guess. God damn it. Oh, it's because I don't have green enabled. So it was Dissident. Yeah, okay. This guy here, a number of the Guild Mages. And then he ran 4, do you know these guys? The healers? He ran 4 Centaur Peacemakers. They were long. I played my first 2 games were versus him. This was round 1. Game 1, I stole with a Murmuring Mystic that he couldn't take care of, and I just took over the board with 1/1 tokens over a long period of time, removing the bulk of his creatures, stalling the ground game, and killing him with Murmuring Mystics. Game 2 was really crazy because I hit at one point in the mid game, I hit a 6 turn in a row mana draw land, and he did 15 damage to me with the Boros Guildmage just burning my face, because where he's like, the board stalled, it's a good use of my mana, I'll kill him eventually with that, and I went from 20 to 5. And then I managed to kill the Guildmage and start drawing cards again and start putting pressure on him, and he replied by playing, I think, 3 Peacemakers over 3 turns. So healing himself for 12 health as well as me for 12 health. The game went on for fucking ever. They do 50-minute rounds. I think we ended up playing like 2 games and we finished them in like 44 minutes. And I snuck in a win in game 2. I beat him in game 1, and then with the Bird Whisperer taking over the game. In game 2, managed to push damage through to kill him eventually. Very grindy games, quite fun. I played Firemind's Research. This was on the bottom, or near the bottom of my deck both games. Second game, I actually got to resolve it. I got 2 counters on it. I drew a card off of it, and then he killed it with a Knight of Autumn. Which is kind of a bummer. I was hoping to see this card do a lot of work in our deck. And this deck, I almost decked myself the second game. I think I was down to 6 cards. Smeltward Minotaur and Firemind's Research quite low on the totem pole, which is too bad. Both of those would have won me the game. I had a really pivotal moment in game 2, where early on in the game, like maybe like turn 6 or something, I had 2 choices of targets for a Hypothesizzle. I could either kill his 1/4 Recluse Spider, or I could kill his Dissident, and I chose to kill the Dissident. He was on 5 mana. I didn't have a great option for a 4/4. It probably meant I was dual blocking and trading, something I didn't really want to trade for the Dissident. But that Spider sat on the board for like the rest of the game, preventing my 1/1s from attacking. I think he killed my Mystic after only getting 2 or 3 birds out of it, and this card was massively annoying all game long. I made a decision also in that same game to steal his Pegasus Courser with Connive instead of saving the concoct portion of this to recur my Murmuring Mystic. In retrospect, I'm not sure if that was the right decision or not. The Mystic was such a good win condition for me. The ability to recast it, to bring it out of the graveyard, would have been really, really nice. And I was splashing 2 black mana sources specifically for the second portion of Connive Concoct. All right, so that was match 1. I came out of that 2-0. Match 2, I sat down against there was a pod of 9. Our pod was 9 people last night. Drafted against another Izzet deck. Actually, a very similar Izzet deck. I think he had 2 Hypothesizzles, a Crackling Drake, a Murmuring Mystic. Don't think he had the Direct Currents, but I think he had a Beacon Bolt. Maybe not. Maybe it was the other way around. Had a Direct Current, but didn't have a Beacon Bolt. Very similar deck. Game 1 was fairly close. He ran some Hellkite Whelps and a Whisper Muse, and I think the quality of his creatures were just a little bit lower. I was able to get ahead with my Murmuring Mystic again on the board, killing his 3/3 flyers with Hypothesizzle, and then I eventually 2-for-1 myself, killing his Murmuring Mystic, and was just able to push through in the air with a combination of Crackling Drake and tokens and burn, and kill him that way. Fairly close game. Would have been fun to have Firemind's Research in there, but didn't draw it. And then my second match versus him, he was a little bit mana screwed, and I played a War Boss into a mana screwed opponent and just killed him in like 4 turns. Because if he has no answer to a War Boss because he can't play creatures because he's mana screwed, even when he does eventually unlock his mana, it's just good game. And felt a little bit bad because I just stole the game from him. So I got a win out of Legion War Boss, which is nice. When you have a rare, it's nice to get the win out of that. So match 3, there was only 2 of us undefeated by the time we hit match 3. So I agreed to draw ahead of time for first place. So I tied for first or tied for second, depending on how you look at that. But of course, we play out the 3 matches to see whose deck would win. And in match 3, I played against a very, very strong Golgari deck. But it didn't matter. I know his deck was strong because I'd looked through the deck list earlier, and I was excited about the matchup. I think it probably would have beat me anyways. It had a lot of late game Golgari payoffs, and all of my damage all my removal is damage based. And it just has a ton of throwaway stuff early. It had 2 Burglar Rats, 3 Hired Poisoners, 2 Gorgons, a bunch of stuff that doesn't do well for me. It's going to always kill a creature with Death Touch and build up his graveyard with a ton of payoff things, but it made no difference. I started my first hand versus him. I rolled well, so I went first. It was 1 mana, 6 non-mana cards, so I mulliganed, and I mulliganed into a Electrostatic Field and 5 lands, which I kept. And then the next 7 draws, were all land except for one Hypothesizal. So I think I hit 12 lands before I hit another spell card, and I lost to being beat down by 1/1 Poisoners and a 2/2 Gorgon. So that was game 1 versus him. Game 2 versus him, my opening hand had no lands, so I mulliganed. My second hand had no lands, so I mulliganed. Went down to 5, where I kept a 1-lander and drew to 2 lands, but never drew to 3 lands, and died before having any options with that. So I went 0-2 in that. And then we were like, let's get a real game. These games took like no time at all. So we tried a game 3 just for fun. And I also didn't ever get past 3 lands and didn't get my 3rd land for like 5 turns after mulliganing once. So the third set of matches was pretty unexciting. I think his deck probably would have beat my deck in the long run anyways, but it would have been fun to at least have tried it. But we got massively land screwed round 3. But overall, pretty nice performance. As I said, I tied for first or tied for second, depending on how you look at it. The overperformers in the deck were Legion Warboss won me 2 games, one directly into a mana screwed opponent, and one letting me get enough tokens to take over to push past the stalled Selesnya game. That was quite good. Beacon Bolt ended up being very good in this. It was my only type of damage that could do more than 4 damage to a target directly, which was pretty nice. Devious Cover-Up was quite good in this deck. It was weird because it like decreases my graveyard spell count, which is annoying for both Beacon Bolt and Crackling Drake. But cycling back Hypothesizals in my deck was really, really solid. So that was pretty good. Memory Mystic, I can't say it overperformed. It performed as expected, which is if I get it on the board with a ton of spells, I win the game, which is what happens every time I play Memory Mystic. The card is great. Crackling Drake was quite good this time, just as a decent flyer. I don't think he was ever bigger than a 5/4, but it was still nice to have him as a decent flyer that demands a removal. And then Hypothesizal performed as expected as well. Just a very, very, very solid card with Izzet Jumpstart. As I draft Izzet more and more, I'm more aware of how powerful this card is. It's not good without a lot of Jumpstart in your deck, but if you have a lot of Jumpstart in your deck, this card is incredible, and it's absolutely essential to fueling your Jumpstart. This gets you the lands that you can discard to the extra cast of Direct Current or something like that. Connive Concoct was also very good. It's just a straight up 2-for-1 most of the time versus your opponent, which is a good card to have. Underperforming cards, Firemind's Research. I didn't draw it enough. I would have liked to play it. I think it would have been good in this deck, but I would have had to have drawn it in the first like 10 to 20 cards as opposed to the last 10 to 15 cards of my deck every single time. I don't think I ever played Sure Strike as a combat trick. I think all I ever did was throw it away to Hypothesizal, so that pretty much underperformed. The Ornery Goblins never showed up, which was kind of annoying. They would have been good versus a lot of the matches I played against. There was a lot of 3/3 Centaurs for my Selesnya opponent. My Golgari opponent had a bunch of 1/1 Burglar Rats and 1/1 Poisoners, which Ornery Goblin would have been fantastic against, but never saw them. Electrostatic Field played out fairly well, got a fair amount of ping damage. My Selesnya opponent Lava Coiled it at one point because he's like, that's the only card on your board that's doing damage to me right now in this stalled state. So that was kind of interesting. Anything else stick out really here? I sided out Sonic Assault a lot. It didn't seem to help me in 2 of my 3 games. I sided it out versus Selesnya, and I think I kept it versus Izzet, and I probably would have kept it versus Golgari if I'd actually got those games. So maybe it wasn't quite as bad as I was thinking, but I did bring in a Dimir Formant to deal with the 3/3s and pretty much nothing else. I had the thought as I was setting up for match 3 that maybe I should try to force Dawn of Hope and Luminous Bonds into my deck, as both of these would be very good to deal with Golgari. I didn't have a lot of splashes. I didn't end up getting any Boros Guild Gates, which would have been nice for that. So maybe I could have forced it with like a couple planes and a Boros Locket, because I don't have a good answer in this deck to large creatures, right? Like, I just don't. Like, all my removal is damage based, which is pretty shitty for trying to deal with big Golgari late game creatures. So perhaps the ability to chump block with life-linking soldiers would have been relevant to that. As I said, I don't think I was going to beat that Golgari deck with what we had here. Overall, fun games. I like playing Izzet. I like drafting Izzet. There's only 2 of us playing Izzet at the table of 9, so I got a fair number of stuff passed to me. As I said, I think I saw 5 Hypothesizals passed to me, 1 Beacon Bolt, a Chemist's Insight, 2 Direct Currents, etc., etc. Saw no Guild Mages. Guild Mages would have made this deck amazing. So I would have loved to have some of those, but overall fun games. So anyways, that's the recap of this week one. Yeah, not as many games as I would normally play because my final matches were double mana screw, and my first 2 matches were on 2-0s as opposed to 2-1s. So I didn't have quite as many games, but fun stuff overall. All right.